let's fly like a fast bird through this software. Again, you're going to have to research it for yourself. I can't do everything for you, and I'm going to have to really try to withhold my natural tendency to explain all these things to you. The first category is utilities. These are things that you use to maintain and to tune up, to learn about your computer system. The first one is called Speccy. Speccy is made by the same company that makes CCleaner, which you'll see in a moment. Well, I'll just tell you about CCleaner now. CCleaner is another one. CCleaner is a suite of tools. It's free. I run CCleaner almost every time before I run a program and after I exit the program. I'll run CCleaner and it clears out temporary files, cookies. It does a lot of other things. It has an uninstall section that I trust more than I trust Microsoft's uninstall when you're uninstalling programs and software. It has a lot of other features. It's like System Mechanic, the one that went to the subscription route, which is offensive and expensive and attempting this. I loved System Mechanic, but I can't recommend it anymore now that they're doing the subscription thing. So CCleaner. CCleaner offers some other free utilities. One of them is called Speccy. Speccy is just something that gives you a lot of detailed information about your computer, down to some pretty low level. So if you're doing troubleshooting or you're trying to figure out what graphics card you should buy that would work best with your computer, if you know about computers, Speccy will help. Other programs like that are CPU-Z from CPU ID. And that's a lot like Speccy. There's another one called GPU-Z. That's for graphics processing unit. That's for specifically your graphics processing system. So that's another program that's worth getting. One program I think is still worth getting. A lot of people might laugh at me. Tough. SuperPi. You know, going back to ancient Greece, calculating pi out to a number of decimal places was an accomplishment. That's what got you invited to parties. Things have changed, haven't they? SuperPi calculates pi out to 10,000 decimal places, 1,000,000 decimal places, 30 million decimal places. Why would you do that? Because it's a very repetitive mathematical action. It lets you measure the speed of your computer relative to the speed of your computer when you make changes and relative to other people's computers. Now the thing with SuperPi is that it hasn't been updated. It's ridiculously simple. It looks like a child wrote the program. I mean, when you look at it, you're not even going to believe this thing's useful, but it is. Worse though is that when it was written, they only had single-core processors. Now you have, dual-core, quad-core, octa-core, hex-core. You have all these multi-core processors, and this only runs on one thread. But that doesn't matter to me, because SuperPi still, as a means of gauging this versus that, still works, even if it's only measuring one thread. So SuperPi is great for that. I run SuperPi whenever I buy a new computer. I immediately run SuperPi, log the results, and I keep that. And as I do things to my computer, I add software, which will go and mess with your startup, and it'll start taking away resources. I'll run SuperPi every once in a while as just kind of a baseline of how much degradation I'm seeing on the computer's performance. Another software, it's actually a website. It's called userbenchmark.com. Absolutely fantastic place. This is a whole paradise for computer geeks. You can download from there a very small program that runs all these tests on your computer. It runs it on your CPU. It runs it on your memory, on your storage, on your graphics card. It runs it on everything. And not only does it give you good indicator of how your system performs, it does it versus people all around the world who use userbenchmark.com, who have similar systems or maybe the exact same system. Okay? Now, if you're shopping for components or you're trying to upgrade your computer, getting to know how user benchmark works to tell you to help you understand the computer you have now is essential. That's a great way to learn about how computers work. I won't go into more detail, but you can spend hours and hours at userbenchmark.com. It's a fantastic site. The next one on the utilities list is Fast Duplicate File Finder. I have accumulated on various hard drives, well, I don't know, it's way over 1 million files. It was 1 million files years ago. It's probably about 2.5 million files by now. These go back to the 1980s. You end up with duplicate files sometimes, especially as you move them around, you copy them on a hard drive. A duplicate file finder is incredibly useful if you have a lot of files and you have a tendency to download the same thing more than once, or take a photo and you make copies and you end up polluting your hard drive with copies of the same thing. The problem is the duplicate file finders out there, there's a whole bunch of them, but they're just not that good. They don't have features like, for example, you need to be able to look at each file to see whether they are in fact exactly the same. I mean, the computer doesn't know if it's the same. It's making a guess based on the file size, the file name. You know, that doesn't mean they're the same file, so you don't want to just automatically delete it. You want to look at it and see what you've got. Fast Duplicate File Finder to me is the best one. Just leave it at that. Likewise, the same company, MindGems, has Visual Similarity Duplicate Image Finder. What that does is it looks at your image files, your photos, and it actually looks at it as if it had eyes. So it's visually looking, you might say, digitally, visually looking at the picture, not the file. So you could have a JPEG and a bitmap, BMP and a JPEG, and a WebP version of the same photo. Well, this thing will go and look at it and it'll say it's the same photo based on what it sees. And that's important. Likewise, they have another one called Audio Dedupe that does basically the same thing for music files. So if you have WAV files over here, and MP3s, and WMVs, and all these different formats for audio, you might have duplicates of the same audio in different formats. This goes through kind of like Pandora, I believe, and it analyzes the audio to see whether it's the same. It's hard to move fast through these, folks. I want to tell you all about them. They're just wonderful programs. WizTree is the next one. What WizTree does is it looks at your entire hard drive and it gives you a graphical representation with colored blocks that shows you how much of your hard drive is being taken up by what. And as you hover your mouse over it, even just move your mouse a little bit, it'll change the file name. So if you see a big gold block taking up, 1/6 of your hard drive, hover over it and you might look at it and go, oh, that's Pro Tools. Maybe if I didn't use Pro Tools and I used something smaller and more efficient, I could free up a bunch of my hard drive space. So WizTree is fantastic for file management and getting the most out of your hard drives. AOMI or AOMI, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Since I've gone to SSD drives as fast as they are, that's what I use for my backups. AOMI's Backupper program. It's free, it's fantastic for cloning your drive. That's what I'm using for backup here when I get this computer ready. Likewise, they have the AOMI Partition Manager. Partitions, don't mess with partitions unless you know what you're doing. You will destroy your computer. But if you know what you're doing, messing with your partitions is crucial to get the most out of your computer. Sorry, my beverages got covered with condensation here. So AOMI for anything backup oriented, cloning drives. If you're installing an SSD and you need to clone the original hard drive, I'm going to mention the one that you've probably heard of is Acronis True Image. This is a competitor to that. Acronis is another one who hijacks your computer, puts a whole bunch of bloatware in there, takes away your resources, puts things in the startup, so when you boot up your computer it has to load this thing. Even though you're only going to clone your drive once every 3 years, every single time you turn on your computer, resources will be hogged by Acronis. I do not recommend Acronis or Acronis True Image for that reason. It's despicable what they do. They should just do the task at hand and leave it at that. Next up is a PDF reader. Remember Adobe, when they came out with PDFs, they had their free reader, but you had to buy their overpriced Acrobat to make PDFs. Well, in terms of readers, I use Sumatra PDF reader. It's free. I like it better than Adobe's. Likewise, when I'm creating a PDF, I use Qt PDF Writer. You create a PDF as a printer. So you go to you have a page you want to make a PDF of, you go up to the file menu and print. That's how you create it. And under printers, instead of choosing your Epson printer, you choose Qt PDF Writer, and it saves it as a PDF file. Alright, and then you can share it with other people. Next up are 2 programs for managing your passwords. When I was younger, the first decade that I used computers, I don't think I ever even had a password. I could remember all my friends' phone numbers. I could remember them all back then. But there were no passwords to remember. And passwords have just absolutely gotten out of hand, especially since now you really need to have a 12, 16 character password that is just full of characters and makes no sense. There's no way you're going to remember it. I have always used RoboForm going way back. RoboForm lets me manage my passwords, and when I go to log in somewhere, all I have to remember is my one main password, my master password, and that takes care of the rest. It'll log me in. I don't have to think twice about it. And since I change my passwords frequently, it makes it a lot easier. There's a free version of RoboForm that I use. Mine, I'm still using the old version. I can't attest to the new version, but they also have a paid upgrade version. The free one, the open source one, is called KeePass, K-E-E, Pass. If you want one that's free, there you go. Next up is an alternative to Microsoft's Notepad. You know, Microsoft Windows comes with Notepad, which is a simple text editor. Hidden in there somewhere is their other one, WordPad. WordPad lets you do things like format text, so you can use different fonts, boldface, underline, all that Notepad doesn't allow. Notepad is just for quick and easy stuff. And then you go up to Microsoft Word, which is a full-fledged word processor. Well, I want something that's as fast as Notepad, as quick and easy, but I want it to have some other features so I can do a bit of formatting. I use Notepad++. Free open source software. It's kind of a hybrid between Notepad and WordPad, but it's not a Microsoft product, so it actually works and it doesn't destroy your computer. Next up is a open source program called FreeDOS. Remember DOS, Disk Operating System. It was the original Microsoft operating system that they got installed on all these computers. That's how they got a lock on the PC industry. Well, when they went to Windows, you could no longer run DOS, which means you can't run all those wonderful DOS programs like the original King's Quest, or that little stick figure flight simulator, or Caveman Olympics, a wonderful game. They had all these events in it, like the mate toss. You'd take your wife and you'd grab her legs and spin her around and throw her as far, see if you can throw her farther than the other guy could throw his wife. Fiendish Freddy's Big Top of Fun, where the clowns would come out and sabotage all of the acts. Great fun games way back from the late 80s, early 90s. With FreeDOS, you can simulate DOS, and you can run all these programs again. Now for me, since I did so much programming in DOS, I have all kinds of software that I wrote for DOS. So it's nice to have FreeDOS if I ever want to access those things. Next along these lines are actually websites. I'm not getting into browsers too much for reasons, no point talking about it. But, well, I will a little bit. Don't use Chrome. It's a Google product. Are you insane? Are you suicidal? It's a Google product. Do you know what Google's main asset is? Multi-billion-dollar company. Its main asset is you, and you, and you. Your information is what gives them their money and their power. Controlling you is essential to Google remaining a viable company. Don't use Chrome. Are you crazy? Are you insane? Likewise, do not use Internet Explorer. That's Microsoft. Unfortunately, it's hard to tell what is a good browser because there's so much corruption in this industry. I don't know if there is a truly good one. There's Brave. I use Mozilla Firefox. The main reason is because it has add-ons I want. Like when I'm on YouTube, it'll block the ads. I don't have to see all those stupid ads, all those Angie Craig ads. Thank you, Angie, for saving Minnesota. You know, that U.S. legislator who did absolutely nothing when I needed help, but keeps asking me almost daily with emails to help her. I don't want to see those ads. So, YouTube Downloader. I have to go to not a coffee shop, I have to go sit outside a coffee shop or something and download the stuff I need and go look at it later in the car. Well, I need a YouTube downloader to do that. Mozilla Firefox has add-ons so you can download those YouTube videos. But also DuckDuckGo. Instead of using Google search engine, do not use Google search engine, folks. Right here in Edina, Minnesota, they had some crime, like counterfeiting or something like that. And the police went and got a court order for Google to give them the names, the identifications of everyone in this region who had searched on the victim's name using Google. So in other words, everyone who had searched on his name or searched on the name of someone who has the same name as this victim when you had no interest or knowledge of this victim of this counterfeiting. But you're a suspect thanks to Google. The police subpoenas Google to get all the people who searched on that name, and they are immediately considered persons of interest, also known as a suspect. You, who had nothing to do with it, didn't even know what was happening, and you're a suspect in the background, and you've got the police looking and digging into you because you searched on the name of someone who lives in Toledo, Ohio, who has the same name. Don't use Google, folks. It's suicide. Use DuckDuckGo. I'm not going to claim it's a perfect solution. I don't think there is a perfect solution. But DuckDuckGo doesn't keep this information. If the police went to them to subpoena them, they would say, we don't have anything. We don't maintain records of that. Because we don't turn our customers into products. They're not our assets. They are people who we are serving. DuckDuckGo also has an extension for Mozilla Firefox to make it more safe. Another thing I'm going to put in here, I'm going to put in a link. When you get Windows 10, I don't know about 11, when you get Windows 10, it omits the classic Windows photo viewer. When you would click on a JPEG, it would bring up this simple photo viewer. You could slide, you could advance or go back and forth between photos. You could roll the wheel and zoom in and out. And that's really all it did, but that's awesome. Really quick and easy to look at your photos. They replaced it in Windows 10 with Microsoft Photos, which is a big, bloated, nonsensical, resource-hogging waste of time if all you're trying to do is look at your photos quickly. I'm going to put a link in there that will show you how to restore Microsoft Photo Viewer into your Windows 10. Again, I don't know if it works with 11. Next category is media players. With Windows, you get Windows Media Player. And it's not bad for what it does, but it's too big, and once again it tries to take control. It doesn't let you just add on things if you want them, it just gives it all to you at the beginning. For example, if you're connected to the internet, and if I listen to a song where I created the MP3 file for that thing back in 1997, all of a sudden the cover art shows up in Media Player for that song. It's like, where'd that come from? Over the last 23 years, I never added the album art to that. And they claim to be helping you, but anytime a computer does something that you didn't ask it to do, you've got to wonder, what else is it doing? What else is it tracking? Why is it gathering this information? And when the police subpoena to get that information, unfortunately, I mean, I love the police, I love the police, but a lot of these detectives are dumb as a stump. And if they get something stuck in their head, they will keep going at it. Like this one guy, there was an aside, you can watch the video online. this police detective brings in a kid whose girlfriend or friend had been shot dead in her bed. He's got black eye, and he brings him in, and the cop starts reaming him. I know you did it. I know you killed her. I know you. And he's there for like a half hour with this kid, and the kid's just barely able to talk. He's in a spaced out world. And after a half hour, the detective looks over there, finally notices he has a black eye, and he goes over and he like turns his head and looks at him, and he runs out of the room. That kid had been shot 4 times in the face, went into his brain, because he was a victim too. He didn't kill the girl, but the detective thinks he knows it all. That's why you don't want these people having this information. It's not because you did anything wrong, it's because stupid people don't know how to interpret information. So don't give them the information, and they won't have anything to misinterpret. By the way, that kid ended up a complete vegetable because of that, because he was arrested and interrogated in that brutal manner when he should have been in a hospital having his life saved. He lost both his eyes, he lost a large portion of his brain, and he's a vegetable. Thanks to that detective who knew it all. So when it comes to media players, what's the alternative to Microsoft Media Player? I use VLC Media Player. It's fantastic. Has a lot of power under the hood if you look for it. And every Christmas it shows a little Santa's hat. I like it. There's another program called Music Bee. If you're just into setting up playlists for your music, try Music Bee. I gotta move fast here, folks. Next up is, what time is it? Yeah, been about an hour. Next up is photo and image editing. This is the Photoshop type stuff. Again, I will not recommend Adobe products, period. Since they went to a subscription model, which is absolutely offensive, unethical, it's horrible, it's wrong. That's what it is. Especially when there's so many products out there that are essentially the same as Photoshop. It's absolutely wrong. If you don't want to spend all that money on Photoshop, go out and get GIMP, which is open source. It's free, and it basically does the same thing as Photoshop. Now here's one that you would have to pay for, but I'm putting it in here because it's worth it. Serif Affinity Photo. I've always called it serif, but I think it's serif, like sans serif text. You know, when you have text with a little curly at the end, that's a serif. I always say serif, but in any event, this company Serif, I actually had their software maybe 10 years ago. I got it at Office Depot in a box, and I liked it. I liked it then. It wasn't quite where it needed to be yet. Now it is. Affinity Photo is all these Photoshop type. They're what's called raster based graphics, pixel. If you're editing the pixels at the pixel level, that's raster graphics versus vector graphics. Vector graphics is more like an Illustrator, where you're defining, you can scale without losing resolution. If you've ever taken a photo, a raster photo, and blown it up, it starts to get fuzzy, look like a newspaper. With vector graphics, that doesn't happen. You can scale it. Anyway, Serif Affinity Photo, it's $55 for a perpetual license. It's yours for as long as you can keep it running on your computer. Well worth the money. Likewise, Corel Paint Shop Pro. Now, the problem is Corel doesn't really do everything right. I don't like the way Corel operates. I have the original older version of Paint Shop Pro when it was owned by Jask. Jask Software was the original author of Paint Shop Pro, and they sold it to Corel. But there's no denying that for a fairly low price, less than $100, you can get one heck of a program in Paint Shop Pro. I believe you can also use Krita, or Krita, much like GIMP. It's open source drawing, photo editing software. I'm not sure if that's appropriate for photos though. Next up category is desktop publishing. Way back when I was writing all those books, when I left school and I started trying to warn the world about the things I had learned in college and in graduate school about what a fraud it was, and I was starting to learn all these different things, right? The corruption of the student loan industry, the corruption of anti-smoking and the medical industry, and health fascism, which we're seeing today, aren't we? I tried to warn you 25 years ago. And when I did it by writing books, well-researched books with all the notes at the end, just like a good academic writer would do, all the references, and I used Microsoft Publisher at that time. Microsoft Publisher was a pretty good program, but that was then. This is now. Your options for desktop publishing, if you want to create flyers or books or posters or anything like that, Scribus, or maybe Scribus, but I say Scribus. I say Sabotage. Kudos to you if you got that reference. Scribus, it's an open source publisher, basically the same as Microsoft Publisher. Serif, again, Affinity Publisher, $55. Are you seeing a pattern here, folks? Perpetual license. Open Element. Now, Open Element is specifically for creating websites. So if you want to create a website, and you need a website designer, Open Element is open source free software for doing that. How much were you going to spend on some software to create a website with? $300-400? I just saved you $300 or $400 by telling you about that. And by the way, I can't thank enough all the people who do the work on these programs, creating them, making them available to people like you and me. Anything you can do to support them. They will all accept donations. Believe me, they will accept them. And I hope you'll do just that. These people have put in a whole lot of work, and we benefit. And the only ones who really, they don't get hurt by it, but the only ones who really don't benefit from it are Adobe and Pro Tools and Microsoft and Google and these horrific monstrosities. Next up is painting, drawing, illustration software. In the Adobe ecosystem, that would be Adobe Illustrator. Adobe. Subscription based. Here's where Krita is going to shine. Open source painting program. Very powerful. Inkscape. Inkscape is basically a direct competitor to Adobe Illustrator. It's open source. It's free. Again, Serif, Affinity Designer. Okay, so here you're dealing with vector graphics, which you could use for animations and things like that. But if you're doing graphic design, Serif Affinity Designer, $55. And let me just say, one reason I'm pushing the Serif stuff is because if you buy more than one, like Affinity Photo, Affinity Publisher, Affinity Designer, they link together. So if you're inside a publisher and you need to edit a photo to bring into your publication, it will go without, you don't have to exit the program and go into photo and bring it up, edit it, save it, load that into, no, it has access to the functions from the other programs from within the program you're in. So for $165 total, you can have publisher, the designer, and the photo. $165 perpetual license. I really like what Serif is doing, and that's why I'm mentioning them here, even though they're not free. There's another site you can go look up, Swatchbooker. This is online, and this is for color matching. I won't get into that in detail, but if you do design, you know how important color matching is. A great tool for that. Next category is animation. Now with animation you have 2D animation and 3D animation. 2D animation is like The Simpsons or Family Guy. 3D animation is like those Pixar movies, you know, Toy Story and stuff like that. The first one, and there's a lot of overlap coming up here, folks, bear with me. You need to create characters, and then you need to animate them, and there's some things you have to do in between. So the first program I'm going to tell you about is called Make Human. It's open source, free. So if you want to create a character, if you want to create a human, you can make them fat, you can make them skinny, you can make them tall, you can make them short, whatever you want. Now Make Human is not the most powerful in the world though, but it's got 3D character modeling. It's a good introduction for free. The one that most people think of when they think of this thing in the open source world is Blender. Blender is the powerhouse software, one of the powerhouse softwares in open source, like GIMP, for photo editing. Blender does a whole bunch of stuff. It can even create 3D models for your 3D printer. Virtual reality, it can be used for creating video games. A lot of video games you play might be made in part on Blender. Visual effects for videos, things like that. Another one is called Natron. Most people don't know about Natron. It's a node-based video compositor. So if you're gonna try to animate your videos, like that video where I had the UFO fly through my car, I didn't use Natron, but that's kind of sort of the thing you might use it for. You could think of it as being like After Effects from Adobe, but it is for 2D, 2 dimensions. Next up is called DAZ 3D. DAZ 3D, you get the program for free. It is for creating and animating 3D models of people, character creators. The problem is they get you with the assets, what they call assets. In other words, you get the program for free, but you got to spend a ton of money to get people, characters, clothes, accessories, hats, a desk, a background, a room that your character walks through. You have to pay out the wazoo for that. You can spend thousands of dollars on the assets. But if you just want to get in and learn about character creation and animation, you can get DAZ 3D for free. And it's worth having. By the way, in animation, there's 2 words to know about. I hate these words. They're pretentious beyond all imagination. One is called assets, which an asset, of course, is supposed to be, I don't know, I don't have any assets. I live in a car. Jeez, I don't know. I bought this. I spent money on this. But this thing makes me money. Like let's say you buy an apartment building and you rent it out, so people are paying you money. That's an asset. If this helps be productive for me and help me to make money, then this is an asset. What they call assets in the animation world is where you just go out and spend money on a bunch of junk that's probably going to sit in your computer and never be used again. It's lunacy to call that stuff assets. It's pretentious, it's misleading, I don't like it. And I want you to be aware, they will call it assets. All it is stuff. It's content. The other word is pipeline. Pipeline is another pretentious way of saying that you have to export, or you can export what you're doing to load it into another program. So if you create something in Blender and you want to be able to use it in DAZ 3D, you create a character in Blender and you want to animate them in DAZ, you need a pipeline version to do that. Okay, so it's for importing and exporting. Anyway, not to get into details on that. Let's see, the other thing to keep in mind is when you're animating, the way you do it is creating bones. So you create a figure, you create a little person. They have legs, they have arms, they have a head. And you go in and you draw the bones just like the human body has. And if you do it right, you're going to have a bone here, a bone here, a bone here, all the way through all the bones in your body. Once you have that, you can tell the computer when to bend just that bone or bones. And that's how you get animation that looks just like the real thing. Some of these have what's called mocap, motion capture. I can sit here and talk into this thing, and the program will see my face, and it will take whatever I'm doing and moving my hands and attribute it to a cartoon character. And the cartoon character will emulate my mouth and my eyes and the way I do this and my hands. It's amazing, folks. That's how you get all this. The stuff you see on TV, it might look like it's something. I mean, a kid in their bedroom can do it if they know about this. But most kids in their bedroom can't afford to buy the overpriced, bloated junk that these big, huge behemoths sell. So go grab the open source stuff and do it for free. Next up is audio editing and music production. I could go on for 5 hours about this, folks. This is my specialty. This is what I've done the most with computers throughout my lifetime with computers. The first thing I need to mention is if you're going to get into audio production at all, get a program called Audio for All. Basically what it is a one-stop shop for your audio drivers. If you buy a synthesizer keyboard and you buy I don't know, some kind of a MIDI controller for your guitar, and you buy a MIDI controller keyboard, and if you go out and get all this stuff for audio production, each one has a driver. The driver is a piece of software that tells your computer how to interpret what's happening when you play the keys on your keyboard. You know, if I have my little keyboard, when I'm typing these keys, how does it know I'm hitting middle C? The driver is what tells it that. Well, the problem is a lot of these companies that build this stuff, they give you a driver, but they're usually not very good. Often they cause things to crash and burn. Audio for All is a very good free general purpose driver. It's more for audio though. It's like for your sound card, for your audio interface, your speakers, your headphones. Just get it and look up what it does. It's well worth having. In terms of audio editing, the go-to, you know, the GIMP, the blender, if you will, of open source free audio software is Audacity. I don't like Audacity personally. I just don't like it. But that's me personally. I have to admit the power under the hood there is tremendous. You can do all kinds of stuff. I think you might even be able to do multi-track recording now in Audacity. Audacity is given away with a lot of products for free. Get it. If you're going to do any kind of audio editing, it's well worth having. Instead of using Audacity for simple sound editing, I use an old version of Goldwave. But unfortunately, the guy who makes Goldwave has kind of gone the I'm going to charge you more than I should and set up subscription route. So I won't update it. I'll use the old, 15-year-old version of Goldwave. Another program that's well worth having if you have a lot of music files and audio files is MP3 Tag. MP3 Tag is fantastic. It inserts when you right-click on your on a file and it brings up that context-sensitive menus. One of them will be MP3 Tag. This lets you tag your MP3 files, so you can put in country and western, or country and western, hip hop. You can add a photo, so like the album art, if you want to add your own photo, whatever it is. MP3 Tag has been unbelievably useful to me. Again, I have, I don't hundreds of thousands of audio files, not just music, but speeches, all kinds of things. If you're into music composition or notation, in other words, if you want to take music and see the notation so you could play it on a piano or something, or if you want to write music by writing the notation like Beethoven or Mozart did, you need notation software. Well, Sibelius and all these things cost a lot of money, and often they go this route, ball and chain. MuseScore is open source music notation software. So you can go in there with a mouse, and you can take a keyboard like this, and you can play your stuff, and it'll record it. It'll show you the sheet music, and you can play it back through different instruments, and you can layer different scores. You can create a whole orchestral piece. Free. MuseScore, fantastic. If you want to get into DJ stuff, the big kid on the block is Serato. Serato is the Pro Tools, the Adobe, the Microsoft of the DJ world. Serato. I want nothing to do with it. Of course, I don't want a whole lot to do with being a DJ, but if I am going to do anything, if I'm going to do scratching or anything like that, there's a program called Dejuiced. I think that's how you pronounce it, DJ-Oost or Dejuiced. It's basically free, and if you do get a DJ controller, it should run on there. You have to look at compatibility. I won't say any more, but if you're into DJing, Virtual DJ is good too to look at. But in terms of free stuff, Dejuiced seems to be free. It's not freeware, but it's meant to be used with a controller. But if you want to learn, you can use your mouse to do the crossfading and the DJ stuff, the basics. Next up is the digital audio workstation. This is to compete with Pro Tools or Logic for Apple, that kind of thing. GarageBand. I use Reaper. Reaper is free. Reaper is tiny. The whole program is like 13 megabytes. 13 megabytes, folks. I mean, I can carry that many zeros and ones around in my mouth. Pro Tools like needs a DVD to install the thing. It's billions and billions of bytes. Like I said, it's bloated and it hogs your system. Reaper is just this streamlined efficiency machine. Now, it does have a learning curve, but if you know what you're doing, Reaper is fantastic. Technically, it's not free. It's $60, but they let you use it full featured with no restrictions for as long as you want to without paying for it. But again, I highly recommend that you do pay them for it. Background on Reaper, you need to know because it's very similar to the wonderful Ken and Roberta Williams, who are so dear to my heart. The guys who formed Winamp way back in the late 90s when MP3s first started, people started hearing about them, file compression for music. One of the first programs that came out was this little itty bitty media player called Winamp. Winamp would play MP3s. And just like Netscape or any of these things that, you know, in the, what they call it, the dot-com boom, would take off, these guys got huge fast. They sold it for millions of dollars, and then they went out and retired. Just like Ken and Roberta Williams. The American Dream, just wonderful, beautiful people. But they love music, so what they did was they created Reaper, and they basically give it away. Why? Because they love music. They are musicians themselves. They love it. That's why. I've got to put a power source on this camera. I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. Plugged in the camcorder. Reaper is a full-featured music studio in your computer. Multi-track recording. You can bring in plugins, effects, instruments. You can bring in synthesizers, drum machines, many of which are free. I'm not going to go into detail now. It's a rabbit hole that I'll never escape from. I'm going to mention just a couple of those plugin companies, though. If you are serious about music production, these are places to start. And this is based on my experience going way back to the first time that Steinberg created the phrase VST, which is the virtual Steinberg technology. That's the standard for Windows plugins. Kuasa Amps. Kuasa is a little company in Indonesia. I hope it's not Malaysia. I'm pretty sure it's Indonesia. These guys make fantastic guitar amplifier simulators, and they're cheap. My first one I got was called Vermilion. It was a model of, it even looked like it, a model of a Fender Deluxe Reverb, which is like a $1,500 amplifier. I paid, I think, $19 for it, and it sounds the same to my ears. A lot of, you know, purists are going to say, well, that's not a tube amp, it doesn't, whatever. It's $19 and not $1,500. Since then, Kuasa has come out with a full range of effects. They do models of Marshall amplifiers, orange amps, you know, I don't have my hat, but the orange. Fender Bassman, and I'm leaving something out, Vox, their latest one. They also have a whole ecosystem in this 360 amplification, so you can create a whole pedal board with all the setups you want. So if you play guitar, look at Kuasa. If you're into music production and you're into synthesizers, keyboards, things of that nature, I can't recommend. My favorite company, and the company that is basically the core of my music studio, is Arturia. They're in France. Arturia stuff does cost money. I'm going to say right up front, it's by far the most expensive thing I'm going to talk about in here. It costs money, but never has it been worth it as much as this. Their V collection has, I think it's up to 24 or 25 meticulously modeled classic synthesizers and keyboards. So the Vox Continental, you know, the one that the Doors used, the clavinet, Stevie Wonder, Superstitious, very superstitious, that thing, Classic samplers, the Moog, Mini Moog, you know, those ones with all the wires you plug in the wires to create the sounds, like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. The digital synthesizers of the late 70s and 80s, the Yamaha DX7s, Hammond B3 organs, you know, A Whiter Shade of Pale. All these classic things. If you went out and bought all those synthesizers today, I'm pretty sure, you know, never quote me on numbers unless I've looked them up, but it could cost you more than $1 million. This software package is, when it's not on sale, I believe $500, and you can get it on sale if you wait around long enough. Not only that, but you don't have to worry about hardware breaking down. You don't have to worry about patching wires. You can do it with a mouse. Just unbelievable. Likewise, Arturia just came out with their effects collection. So they have a set of preamps, such as the ones that were used at Abbey Road. So if you want to have that kind of vibe like the Beatles when George Martin produced. The Pre-73, you know, for if you want that feeling of like Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. This is the hardware that it was recorded on, the preamplifiers that were used in the studios at Abbey Road and elsewhere. It has a whole bunch of effects, really, really, really good effects. Space echoes, reverbs, fantastic reverbs. Again, that package costs probably, I can't remember, $300 or $400. But if you're serious about music, for under $1,000, you can get Reaper, Kawasa amps, the Arturia synthesizers, and effects for under $1,000, and you will have something that is infinitely more powerful than anything the Beatles ever had access to or could even have conceived having access to. Infinitely more than that for under $1,000. There's a lot of other stuff you can buy for music production, but you can also spend a lot of money on stuff you're not going to need. I list these out as a gift to you based on my experience. If I had to take music stuff for the old desert island trek, what would you take if you were stuck on a desert island? Reaper, Kawasa amps for my guitars, and Arturia for effects, studio production, and synthesizers, keyboards. I put a bonus in here. This is a piece of hardware. When you're doing audio stuff, no matter what it is, even if you're just doing audio to put with your videos or if you're recording music, you've got to have a good set of cans, right? Frankly, you need a good set of monitor speakers. You don't just want to play through regular speakers, and you don't want to play through regular headphones. You want to play through what's called a monitor. So, monitor headphones, monitor speakers. What those are, they're speakers that give you a flat response. You see, when you buy headphones, especially with hip-hop and the advent of all this really crappy music over the last 30 years, when you buy a set of headphones, it usually, if you look at the frequency chart, it usually puts a big boost at the bass end. Or it'll have a button, like a bass boost button. So you're listening to it and you push the button and boom, 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 and it starts doing that. Not only does that sound like absolute crap, but it doesn't reproduce what the person originally created anymore. They didn't create it with all this extra booming bass, so why are you listening to it with all that extra booming bass? Listen to Dark Side of the Moon the way that Pink Floyd created it. Listen to Abbey Road the way the Beatles created it. But these headphones, they put in these boosts in the treble, they put in all these, they're just trying to be clever. It's an audio illusion. It's meant to manipulate you. You put them on, you go, wow! But you never think for a minute, hey, this is totally changing the actual sound of what it is that I'm trying to listen to. What are you going to do? Take the 1812 Overture and use a set of headphones that completely changes the frequency response of what the orchestra did? That doesn't make any sense. Stop buying headphones. Stop buying speakers. Start buying monitors. Monitors have a flat response. They reproduce exactly what the person originally created. Monitor speakers, they don't cost that much. You can get a set of Mackie MR824s. They're probably, what, $199 a piece for 8-inch monitors? You put two of those in your room or with your DVD, your home theater, you won't believe how good that sounds. For what, $300-400? But headphone wise, because all I can do is headphones, right? I can't have monitors anymore. I lost my home studio and I lost everything else. I have used these for years, going back to when I was in the apartment. Audio-Technica ATHM30X. This is what I use. Now if you look at them, you're going to see they're all cracked and looks pretty nasty. Okay? The fact is, these are really comfortable, soft. The reason they're all cracked like that is because they sit in a car that gets up to 120 degrees every day. And then it cools down at night, and then it heats up and it cools down, and it heats up and it cools down. That's what destroys these things. But the fact is, because I'm in the car, I keep sitting on them, I keep breaking them, stretching them. This thing will crack off. I have to replace these probably twice a year. And you can tell these are due for replacement soon. The pin on there is bent from being in the car. But when I was in a home, that wasn't the case. These things didn't get mangled physically. These are outstanding headphones. You can also get the ATHM 40 or 50. They have a larger driver, so they have a larger capsule in there, which does give you more bass, but it doesn't boost the bass. That's the difference. It gives you more bass. I think the 30s are fine. These things, folks, these things are $69. Comes with like a 6-foot cord. $69. If you want to go up to the 40 or 50s, they have detachable cables, so that's a benefit. Get yourself a pair. I don't work for these guys. I'm not trying to sell them, but you will know the difference. And if you're doing audio production with this software, if you don't have monitor speakers and monitor headphones, you're shooting yourself in the foot. There's no point to having all that software if you're going to listen back through a sound system that attempts to manipulate you by using audio tricks to make you think, wow, man, these speakers sound great. It's like the old days of the boom box, those guys walking down the street, Fat Albert, on their shoulder. Sounded like crap because it's not reproducing the original sound. Anyway, enough about that. Like I said, I could go on about music for days. Let's go into productivity software. Okay, have you ever heard of a thing called Microsoft Office? I'll let you jog your memory while I take a sip. Microsoft Office is a bit expensive, isn't it? But it includes a lot of useful stuff. Microsoft Word, word processing, Excel for spreadsheets, has that PowerPoint for presentations. Gee, wouldn't it be nice if somebody made a free version of that? And especially wouldn't it be really nice if the free version of that was perfectly compatible with Microsoft Office? Hey, what do you know? Somebody did. What do you know? The original one was called Open Office. Actually, it's called openoffice.org. Don't ask me why. The way entities are set up, lawyers should be the first ones to test out our long distance spacecraft. Just put them on the boat, send it out, and we'll see whether it makes it or not, because they're expendable. Okay, when you're setting up legal entities and stuff like that, it's Open Office, folks. They call it openoffice.org for legal reasons, whatever. See, this is our world is run by stupid people. Open Office, it's basically Microsoft Office. And even though it has its own proprietary file formats, you can load in Microsoft Office and you can save to something that you can use in Microsoft Office. So let's say, for example, you're a corporate employer who's run by really stupid people who don't know how to manage their shareholders' wealth properly. They went out and they bought 10,000 licenses for Microsoft Office. So instead of paying their employees, $10,000 a year more, they're blowing it on this software. But because you're overworked, you have to take your work home with you. And you don't want to spend all that money on Microsoft Office. So what you do is you save your Microsoft Office files at work on a jump drive, you go home, you load them into Open Office, and you do your thing, and you save them as Microsoft Office files, and then you go back to the corporate people with all the wasted money. Or if you're just doing stuff at home, you just stay with OpenOffice the whole time. There's a caveat here, folks. OpenOffice is good, and I've used it for many years. In the last several iterations, I've had a problem, though, where whenever I load a file, it says corrupted. Do you want to fix it? And then it'll go through and it'll fix it. Okay, I haven't lost data, but it's a real nuisance and it's scary. LibreOffice is the way to go. LibreOffice, see, again, open source software means that they give not only the program away for free, but the source code. And what happened with OpenOffice is some people took the source code at one point and they started making that their own, and it went off on this different tangent. That's called LibreOffice. To me, LibreOffice is much more stable and faster, and I don't have any of those file problems. LibreOffice, they even have a bit of Mathematica in it for mathematics notation. Okay, if you're doing projects specifically, like project management, where you need all those charts and I don't know. Project management is fascinating. When I've done that, I really like it a lot. But the problem is people get sucked into all these fads, agile and just all these sick, pretentious terminologies that are set up by ruthless consultants that isn't necessary. To run a project, you just kind of need a brain and you need a way to organize it. Open Project. It's open source project management software. So if you have a small company or if you as an individual are trying to do a project, try Open Project instead of going out and buying some expensive project management software. Likewise, if you want to something like Quicken, something for keeping your books as an individual or as a small business, GNU Cash, open source financial accounting software for small businesses and individuals. What if you like to make screenplays? Okay, like for films. Okay, if you're a screenplay writer, or you want to be, there's a format for writing a screenplay that's totally unlike anything else. It's much similar to a play, and you need to have that format, because if it doesn't have that format and you hand it to an agent or you hand it to a producer of a film or something, or an actor, they're not even going to look at it. Okay, it has to be that format. Well, I use a program called Sophocles, and it's I have a version from way back when that I still can use. I don't think they even exist anymore. But there's this neat thing online called Open Screenplay. The only bad thing is that it's in the cloud. So what you're writing is going to be out there in the internet. And that scares the daylights out of me. If you don't want to have your work stolen or hijacked or destroyed, I get really nervous. But on the other hand, Open Screenplay is part of a whole community online where if you are writing screenplays, you can have other people see it. They can critique it and help you. You can have people who deal in production see it, and they might want to buy your work. So if you really want to get established as a screenwriter, Open Screenplay is a great place to go. It's a website with the software built in, web-based software. And the last one under productivity, again, this is really pretentious, but you remember Tony Robbins in the 1980s, personal power. He was like the self-help version of that guy who said, from my one-bedroom apartment, I built this mansion. Tony Robbins, so he sold all these personal power. People are so stupid. He sold all these programs that are going to give you personal power and you're going to be the man. And he establishes himself as an expert and a guru on being a success when he hasn't actually done anything in his life except sell programs that tell other people how to be a success. And when you actually look at these other people, what do you know? They're not successes. It's kind of like Van Andel and DeVos with their, shall we say, triangular Amway scheme. Three-dimensional triangle. Along those lines, in software world, like with Agile, all these stupid, pretentious ideas these people come up with, this is going to make us more efficient, blah, blah. Instead of just using your brain. They come up with these ridiculous systems. They came up with what they call software called mind mappers. Mind mappers. By Rasputin Software, I presume, right? Alright, so if you're not afraid of entering the world of sorcery or something, I don't know what they're trying to prove. A mind mapper is what I call an idea organizer. Hey, I'm just a simpleton. I'm just a guy who lives in a car. But then again, I'm not trying to sell an idea organizer as a mind mapper either, am I? But the fact is, hey, you know what? Hold on, I'm going to go over here and show you something. I'm glad I have this here. Just a moment. As I go about my days, sitting in the car, sitting at work, because I'm very productivity oriented. In my last video, The Cost of Being Homeless, I lamented how I have lost almost all my productive time being homeless. When I was in a home, if I was awake, I was productive. I was doing something. I was writing books. I was making music. I was writing screenplays. I was doing something. Being in the car, that's all but gone. Other than these videos, I haven't produced anything to speak of outside the context of these videos because I can't. But I'm always writing down my ideas. These are my ideas. These pieces of paper, there's a few receipts in here, I'll admit. There's a few receipts in here, but I dropped some. These are my ideas for 2 weeks. That's how much I accumulated in 2 weeks. And I have to go put those into my own idea organizer. I created my own idea organizer. But a mind mapper is basically that. It's to take your ideas and to link them together and try to find a way to make these ideas work. Big introduction for that. The program is called Free Mind. Free, you see, because it's free. Open source mind mapping software. It's an idea organizer, folks. If you take away the Tony Robbins, paint job they put on this thing where mind mapping, it's an idea organizer. If this type of thing works, if you're right-brained or left-brained or whatever these people claim, if that's the kind of thing that helps you organize your ideas, Free Mind is free. Or you can pay one of those consultants, $15,000 for the same thing. If you're a corporate executive who doesn't have the competence of a small child. How about mathematics, after all? Mathematica took over the world. They took over academia, and once academia was locked in, because academia, doesn't matter how much you charge them, all they have to do is raise tuition. And then the student loans jump in to pay for it, and then you've got these kids locked in for the rest of their lives in debt to a absolutely viciously inhumane system. What if you don't want any part of that? You think it's immoral or wrong, or you just don't want to spend all that money on a mathematics program? Well, how about Mathics? Freeware. Along those lines, if you look at, for the mathematics research I do, which I obviously don't do much anymore, when I had a home I did, a lot of fractals research. Fractals are proof of God's existence. Okay? And fractals were not discovered. They were there in nature, just like DNA was there all along since creation, but nobody knew it until they didn't know about DNA till the 50s. They didn't know about fractals till around 1980, because it basically took mathematics that an ancient Egyptian could do, but they have to do so many iterations, millions and millions of times, that there's no way in a lifetime you could do it manually. But a computer can do it. And when they did it, they looked at it and they said, oh, wow. And all of a sudden there was this built-in organization to nature, mathematics, called fractals. If you want to look into fractals, folks, there's 2 programs. One is called Mandelbulb. The other one is called No wait, Mandelbulber, sorry about that. The other one is called Mandelbulb 3D because it's based on the Mandelbrot set, which gives you this famous fractal thing. Anyway, not to get into mathematics. If you're into that, those are free software. So again, Mathix for mathematics and notation, and then for fractal research, this isn't really fractal research, it's more for using fractals for artwork, but you can use it if you're using your mind. Mandelbulber and Mandelbulb 3D. Moving right along, applications. These are just kind of standalone applications I needed to put in a category. The first one is Calibre. Calibre is an ebook reader, a free ebook reader. So if you're into getting ebooks from online, if you go to the Internet Archive or if you buy them, Calibre is a great free ebook reader. When it comes to the Bible, you know, the Bible, if you take one of these programs and put it on your phone and you're in Afghanistan, the Taliban, when they look at your phone and they say there's a Bible on there, it's like you're just shot dead on the spot. Thanks to a certain state who elected a certain cretin as the leader, the illegitimate leader of this nation. Anyway, you can watch my previous videos for more on that. But if you do want to put a Bible on your computer, because with the Bible you can search, you can do word studies, you can look up the original language and look up the words in Greek and Hebrew. eSword is probably the way to go. I personally use BP Bible, but I don't see where BP Bible is available anymore. I saw a few download links for it, but they didn't look trustworthy to me. I think it's been abandoned, but I still use it. It's much like eSword, it's just a bit different format. But you can bring in commentaries from famous commentaries from Christian theologians throughout the ages. All kinds of other books you can bring into this to study, not just read, but study the Bible, and you can put in your own notations and notes. You can link passages to each other. Very powerful if you're into studying the Word of God. Probably not as valuable to you if you only study the Word of Justin Bieber, who isn't God, by the way. Next up under applications is a wonderful program called Stellarium. Stellarium is a planetarium software for free. So if you look up Stellarium, if you want to see what the night sky looked like on, I don't know, let's say, the day that Jesus was crucified. So you reverse it back up there to the period, and my understanding from that is that high in the sky at that time was Aries, the goat. If you know anything about the Bible, way back with Abraham when he asked him to sacrifice his son, and then he stopped him at the last minute and he said, I, the Lord, will provide the sacrifice, the goat. When Jesus, the final sacrifice, died, the goat was in the sky. Anyway, or if you just want to see where the planets were on this period or what the moons are like around the planets, if you like planetarium astronomy stuff, Stellarium, folks, it's free. This next one costs a little bit of money, but it's really fun. I think it's either $30 or $40, not much at all. Comic Life. It's just fun if you want to create comic books, comic strips. Alright, I'll just leave it at that, but if that's your bag, go for it. Next up category is video and video compositing. I'm going to give you 3 free video editors. Alright, the first one is called Shotcut. The second one is called DaVinci Resolve. And the third one is VSDC. VSDC is actually a suite. It's free, but it also comes with a video converter, audio converter, so you can go from MP3 to WAV and all these different audio formats. The video converter goes from MP4 to MOV to WMV to AVI, all these different formats. It has a screen capture, it has a video capture, and it has a CD grabber. if you want to take music from a CD and turn it into an MP3 if it is not DRM protected. VSDC has a suite with all that. So Shotcut, DaVinci Resolve, and VSDC, all of these are free, and you can do editing and at least simple effects, text overlays. You can do green screen, motion effects. You can do a lot for free with video editing. If you want to pay a little bit of money, remember Corel. Corel had PaintShop Pro. They also have their Video Studio. And Video Studio and PaintShop Pro go together really well. So if you're going that route, getting both is a good idea because they integrate with each other. You can do the image manipulation to bring into your videos and such. But it does cost money if you do the Video Studio route. If you're doing video, you often need to do video conversions or video compression, reduction. Whenever I make these videos, they're huge. They're huge. Especially with the kind of internet connections I have available, these things would literally take 8 hours to upload. So I have to compress them, shrink them down as much as I can, and then put them on YouTube, and then YouTube compresses it again. If you've ever wondered why my videos sometimes look pretty fuzzy and pixelated, there's your reason. If I had a home, I would be able to knock out a lot of the reason for that, but I can't do it. If you need to do video conversions, Handbrake. Handbrake is a fantastic video converter. It's also a DVD ripper. So if you want to take a DVD movie and make a small MP4 file out of it, again, if it isn't DRM protected, you can use Handbrake for that. Another program I have used for years, and keep in mind any of these video converter programs are basically the same thing. Again, credit goes to the people who write all of the codecs. The codecs are what tell how an AVI file is defined and how to convert it from that to an MP4. There are programming wizards who have created these codecs that are fantastic. I won't get into detail, but those people deserve all the credit. Handbrake and Super, which is this other one I've been using for so many years, they are basically a front end. They bring in all these codecs, but they give you an interface that makes it easy for you to do it. You don't have to have low-level knowledge of all the details and the bit rates and the frame rates, all these things that you have to worry about when converting video. So the other one is called Super. And Super is really neat. In fact, after all these years, I finally just paid for it. I didn't need to because I've been using the free version for years, but it was worth it. I wanted to support the guy. It was only like $14. But it also has 2D to 3D conversion. So you can take your videos and you can convert them into 3D. And then if you get the blue and red glasses, or if you get the polarized 3D glasses, you can watch your videos in 3D for free. Super will convert them. Alright? Next up is online utilities. There's so many of these I could have put here. I didn't want to go too far. The first one is a fun place where you can upload your photos and insert your people's faces into interesting situations just like that. It's called photofunia.com. Next up is one called Oddcast Text-to-Speech. Oddcast is actually paid software, a whole bunch of different things, but when you go to their sampler for the text-to-speech, I use that quite often. If I type in the text and it reads it back in a fairly human-sounding voice, it doesn't sound robotic. But the nice thing about this one is that there are a whole bunch of different speakers, and they even have accents. So if you want someone who speaks English but with an Indian accent, or a French accent, or an Irish accent, then you can get that, and that's really hard to get without paying money. Now the downside is that you can only hear it, you can't download it. You can figure out what to do there. I have a handheld recorder so I can get around that, but anyway, it's a neat place to go. Another one is called RemoveBG. RemoveBG is a image background remover. So in other words, if you have a photo and you want to make part of the photo transparent so you can slide it on top of another photo and merge them, you can upload your photo into there and it will do it, and then you can download it back. Alright? Oh, hey, you know what? I was finishing up here and I found another one that belongs in the category of online, well, stuff. Maybe not online utilities as such. I'm talking about Gog.com. Now, of course, in Bible prophecy, Gog, most people would agree, is Russia, who is going to, for the first time in all of human history, get together with Iran, Turkey, and some African countries and attack Israel in the Ezekiel 38 war, coming soon to a Middle East near you. That's not what I'm talking about. In this case, GOG stands for Galaxy of Games. GOG.com is really, really cool. It's basically a site that has all of those old video games that you loved when you were growing up, going way, way back, even XCOM, which I think was like 1993 or something. All these wonderful old games, but they're DRM free. You remember what I said about Steam? Steam came in, ball and chain, lock you in. You must be on the internet to play this game. And we must traffic and analyze your personal data while you're doing it. And who knows what else they're doing. If you don't have the internet, you're screwed. You can't play the game. Well, GOG doesn't do that. GOG takes all these great older games and sells them dirt cheap. I mean, you can get these games sometimes for 99 cents, $3.99, and they're DRM free. So you don't have to have the CD in the drive. You don't have to be connected to the internet. You don't even have to think about Steam. It's a really, really neat website. Again, I'm not a big gamer, but it sure was nice to find GOG and to bring back all those memories from when I was younger, to find those games that were playable again. And even some of the games like, there was a PlayStation 2 game called Destroy All Humans that I loved so much, and here it was available on the PC for the first time. So, anyway, GOG.com. Okay folks, so that's all I have for you in terms of free and low-cost open source software. Again, this is my gift back to my subscribers and my viewers. Hopefully it's going to save you a lot of money. Hopefully it's going to help you get some software that you can really use. This is good stuff, folks. This is good stuff, and it just didn't occur to me earlier that other people really don't know about this stuff. So I'm glad I had an opportunity to share it with you. Looks like I cut the time down from 3 hours to about 2 hours. Sorry. I always do that, don't I? Well, so I'll probably have to break this video up, but guess what, folks? I've got more for you. So there might be a part 3. The part 3 would be stuff on the internet that you can find and look at, like content. I don't know, we'll see if I have time to do that. Anyway, that's all I have for you on this video. Look at the links in the description. I'll put the official sites for each of these. If you search for them, especially in Google, because Google's notorious for giving bad search results, be very, very careful. Someday maybe I'll do a video on how to understand how these things work, but use the links and go research it. You know, if you're interested in astronomy, go to Stellarium, see what they have to say. Go look at some YouTube videos about it. If you like what you see, download it. It's free. If you need something like Microsoft Office but you can't afford it, or you don't trust Microsoft, go grab LibreOffice. Just takes a few minutes. It's so much smaller than Microsoft Office. Hope this helps you out, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and again, look at the description below for the details and the links to each of the software that I just gave you. You take care now.